In today's episode of Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, you're in for a great treat. My guest today is Theresa Sam Houghton. Her friends and business associates call her Sam. Sam is out to transform today's broken food system by helping plant-based brands create understandable content that bridges the gap between their products and their customers. As the chief nerd at the Modern Health Nerd, Theresa Sam Houghton is using smart strategies and great content to bridge that gap. She's a graduate of Bauman College Nutrition Consultant Program and the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies Plant-Based Nutrition Certificate Program and uses the expertise to bring a unique perspective to content marketing. You're in for a great treat today as Sam and I dig deep into why it's important for companies to have great content marketing and content strategies to reach more of their market in the vegan and plant-based world. So stick around.
Welcome to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, where your host, Kathleen Gage, shines the spotlight on vegan and plant-based businesses and entrepreneurs from all walks of life committed to cruelty-free eating, healthy lifestyles, animal compassion, and the environment. Enjoy the show.
You know, Sam, I know you outside of the podcast world. I actually know you from Clubhouse, and we actually are in a club together that we host every Tuesday night. And depending on where you are in the world, it could be middle of the night, it could be morning, but for most of us, it's in the late afternoon, evening. And you are known as the Modern Health Nerd. You are vegan. So let's start with what made you decide to go vegan? What does that mean to you? And then we'll go from there.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story with a little bit of an embarrassing beginning. I was that teenager that heard vegetarians were thinner, so I thought, great, I'll try that, which was very silly. And I always tell people this is a silly reason to go vegan. It's a silly reason to go vegetarian because most people who do, you don't really need to lose that much weight. I didn't need to, but I thought I'll go vegan. Well, this was 12 years ago. Pretty much the alternatives that were out then was stuff like Light Life, the Yes brand, and like tofu. And if you've ever had some of the earlier tofu soy dogs and things like that, you know where I'm coming from. Oh, and there was that plastic type plant-based cheese that wasn't really vegan because it had casein in it. So I had a lot of hits and misses. And when I realized it was really difficult, I started with vegetarianism. Then I finally made peace with the fact that I'm extremely lactose intolerant. Like, I don't even want to tell you how I found out. It was that bad. I tell people the last time I ate a can of dairy yogurt, I thought I was going to have to call an ambulance. It's that bad. Wow. So I figured if I eat vegan food, then I don't have to worry about dairy. Then I started to learn about factory farming and the health impacts and all of the things that were going on in the food system. And I continue to learn about that to this day. And that was when I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to stay. And it's been a trajectory for me. I started out with a lot of the transition foods, a lot of the convenience foods. When I was vegetarian, I practically lived on bean quesadillas. And I've come to the point where I lean heavily whole food plant-based. I still will go out for a vegan burrito once in a while. I like to have some meat analogs now and then. I make my own non-dairy cheese now and then. But it's really been a trajectory from that very beginning to, I get up in the morning and make a stir fry. And right. I actually wound up taking the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies plant-based nutrition certificate course. And after that, I found another not plant-based. There wasn't 100% plant-based health coaching program at the time, but I found one that was very whole food focused. And I went through that and got certified as a health coach. So I have that background, all stemming from what started as a dietary change and wound up as a huge lifestyle change. I also want to add that at the very beginning of this trajectory, I weighed 90 pounds. I had an eating disorder and some other digestive issues that all kind of conflated to make, I weighed 90 pounds and I'm 5'6". On the plant-based diet and a good lifting and exercise regimen, I put on over 25 pounds and a lot of it's muscle. So it can be done.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, and weight training, in addition to just feeling good, it's so good for our bone density, all of that. And I actually haven't been able to lift in a while because I broke my wrist 5 months ago and I'm still recovering from it. So I was talking to my PT about that. It's like, I want to get back to the weights. But
When can I lift?
yeah, really. I mean, I miss it. I miss it a lot. But I'm curious, what year was it that you went vegan?
Oh boy. Well, I'm. This is later in the day for me, so math is hard. We're in late 2021 now, and I went. Let's see. August was my 12-year veganversary, so we'll extrapolate back from that. It would have been what, 2009?
Okay. Okay. Somewhere like that. Yeah. That
Somewhere
works for
around in
me.
there.
Somewhere in that time period. But now, it's so interesting because you said you started vegetarian and you converted to veganism, or you transitioned, I should say, because a lot of people say, oh, it's the vegan cult. And it's like, no, it's not a cult. It's like the murder of animals, I think, is more of a cult. But quite seriously, a lot of people don't understand the distinction between being a vegetarian and being a vegan. In one or two sentences, just tell us the difference.
Well, vegetarians, there's so many quote unquote flavors of vegetarians. Some people are flexitarian, where they sort of kind of eat vegetarian some of the time or most of the time. Then you have pescatarians who eat fish. You have lacto-ovo vegetarians who eat eggs and dairy. And then you'll either have ovo or lacto, where they leave out one or the other. And veganism, no animal products whatsoever. And a lot of people who take it, the vegan lifestyle, all the way to the end, they don't do it in their beauty care products or anything that they wear.
And that's what I've transitioned to. It's only been a little over 3 years, but now when I go and I buy cosmetics, I make sure that they're cruelty-free and vegan. I have a closet, literally a closet full of Western boots that I'm going to be giving to the homeless shelter, because I'm not going to toss them out. I think some people could get use out of them, but they're cowhide. They're, some real high-end boots that were like $300-400 a pair. I can't wear them anymore. I think as we become aware, which really leads into the question about your business. Now, you do content strategy, and you work primarily, if not exclusively, with vegan and plant-based businesses. When did you start your business?
That also has an interesting trajectory. When I was doing health coaching, I was content writing kind of to pay the bills. It's like health coaching is kind of a hard sell in upstate New York. We tend to default to like ordering pizza when we don't know what to do. So there's a lot of a hard sell there. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I lost my biggest content writing client because of everything. And so I was a little desperate, but I wound up finding a great business coach, and I want to give a shout out to him. His name is Jeremy Chevalier. He was very, very good. And he helped me to kind of merge my health coaching background and my content writing background to start working with brands and to start building more of a network and connecting with people who were basically doing great things that I thought I wanted to help them do. And over the period of the last couple of years, I've been learning more and more about SEO, more and more about strategy, working with different brands, and building something that can help these brands reach their customers and really also spread the word about plant-based food. Because Kathleen, the plant-based movement is just exploding.
Oh my gosh. It's incredible what's happening. And, I actually have to say thank you for sharing the word desperation, because I've had my business 27 years. I have been very successful in my business. The pandemic hit. I'm a keynote speaker, and we all know what happened to conferences. Well, most people know what happened to conferences when the pandemic hit and the shutdowns happened. And literally overnight, I lost about 80% of my revenue stream. And that's at that point, I was 25 years in business, really set. I had, contracts on the table. I remember it was a $20,000 contract for a speaking engagement, and the client was going to sign it. And the next day, the shutdown started happening, and I'm waiting and thinking, please sign it, please sign it. And she goes, I'm sorry to tell you, but we have to cancel the conference. And it's like, but then they went virtual, and we negotiated what would work really well to serve them fully and get my fee and the whole 9 yards. And it all worked out. But I had a lot of not a lot, but I went through a period of desperation. And I have to say, had I not been plant-based vegan in my eating and had clarity of mind, I don't know how I would have handled this whole situation because I actually pivoted my business and now I work almost exclusively with vegan and plant-based brands and authors, speakers, coaches, those people who want visibility. So I really am so appreciative that you shared that, because a lot of people, they attach shame with the word desperation, like, oh, we shouldn't be desperate, we shouldn't be fearful. And the reality is, when you run a business, there are times you hit the wall. So let's talk about who your ideal client is as you're going about looking for the right match of working with an organization. Who is that ideal client?
I cast a really broad net in the beginning. I thought plant-based, and I even looked into health and fitness. But the more people I talked to, the more people that I got to know, and the more I got to know the industry, and I saw this separation of the larger brands that are more the meat analogs and some of the bigger cheese makers, and even separation of things like the cell-based and the fermentation from more of the smaller brands that, have the potential to become household names. And we've seen it happen with people like Miyoko. I mean, I think she's a fantastic example of how you can take like a dream and make it this giant thing. And so I've got a heart for the people who are in the consumer packaged goods, the CPG space. And a lot of people, you mentioned pivoting your business for the pandemic. Well, a lot of people either went direct to consumer or decided to launch direct to consumer. And DTC is a really interesting space, especially with plant-based. So I really have a heart for those brands. I go for plant-based. I go for people who are also targeting flexitarians, because that's a big open door to get people to eat more plant-based, even if they're not ready to go completely. And I also like the brands that are doing functional ingredients and who are also on the better for you trajectory, because honestly, I think we've seen kind of the heyday of the 1-for-1 swap. I don't really care what's in it as long as it's not an animal. I think now we're going to see the next evolution of that is going to be, how healthy is it? And also we're seeing sustainability, which tends to go hand in hand with a cleaner label.
Right.
So I'm seeing a lot of brands that are starting to move in that trajectory. And that's really where my heart is. And since I'm the modern health nerd, a lot of them are using ingredients that you can get nerdy about, especially if they're doing functional stuff. So anywhere that I can help somebody to not only spread the word about their product, but also help them help their customers eat better and live better by creating that content. Because it's not just about selling. It's about really helping people to live a better life.
I love it. I love it. And I want to remind people that you're listening to the Vegan Visibility Show with Kathleen Gage, and I'm talking with Sam Houghton, and she is the modern health nerd. And Sam, how do people find you?
Oh, wow, Kathleen, thanks for asking. I am at modernhealthnerd.com. It's all one word, so modernhealthnerd.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You're going to want to search for Theresa Sam Houghton, because that's my full name with my, as you mentioned before we were talking, alter ego slipped in there. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not terribly active, and there I'm at Modern Health NRD. So okay. Modern Health NRD, all one word, no punctuation. And I don't know when I'll be getting active there again. I was active on Twitter for a while, but I'm thinking of leaning more towards Instagram. You can also find me on Clubhouse at Modern Health NRD.
Definitely on Clubhouse. And, it's interesting because I actually started a club called Vegan Visibility, and I've got members in there and haven't done anything with it, but I love our Tuesday room, and people can find us. It's at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. And what's the name of our room anyway, Sam?
Well, we're the Whole Food Plant-Based Club, and we just like to call it Whole Food Plant-Based Room, but we have all different kinds of topics. And yeah, we love to have people in and ask questions and contribute your stories. We have some really inspiring rooms.
We do. And it's growing every week. I love it because this week we had quite a gathering, but let's talk about content strategy and content marketing, because a lot of people don't understand that. I actually work with clients teaching them how to get on podcast shows, how to expand their reach through podcast. I've been a book coach where I've worked with authors teaching them how to market their books. And one simple strategy that a lot of authors miss is you put lead bait inside your book, and you might have a campaign where you even give your book away on Kindle. That drives traffic and yada, yada, yada. We could go on and on about that. But the reality is people don't get that. They go, why would I give my book away? And it's like, why would you create value for people? That's really what content is about, is to educate, raise awareness, and create value. So how do you educate people on the fact that content marketing and content strategy is very important in growing their business?
Well, one thing I really see people missing is taking the big step back on the strategy piece. You intersect with brands, and a lot of them are at a place where we know we should be doing X with our content, or we've tried X with our content, or are trying whatever it is. And you dig a little deeper and they either don't have buyer personas or they haven't refreshed their buyer personas in a while. They're not talking with their audience. A lot of it is assumptions, and I feel for them, they've read all of the content marketing advice, but they're just going, it's almost like when you have an illness, just treating the symptoms instead of getting to the heart of it. They're just kind of going with these surface things. They're partnering with influencers and running giveaways, and they don't see the conversions that they want. And so what I like to do is take them a step back and be like, well, first, why are you doing this? Why does your brand exist? What really drives you? And yes, I stole that from Simon Sinek, but haven't we all? So take them back to that. And once they get reoriented, you can kind of go from there and see, okay, what goals do you really want to accomplish with this? And when it comes down to it, it's got to be the strategy piece. So I show people, this is what we need to do. This is why it's going to link to your business goals. And this is why it's going to make your content better. And then also I like to show them that when you start doing written content, like a blog, it can power your entire content engine. I like to call it a content engine because when you have really good blog strategy with core topics and supporting articles, you can pull from that for your other content, your social media, your YouTube, even guest blogging and podcast interviews almost indefinitely. And that helps you to not have to worry about what am I going to post and spend hours and hours and hours crafting separate posts. And it also keeps your brand voice and your brand identity cohesive so people can get to know who you are. And that's the other part of the strategy piece is who's your audience? How do you connect with them? How do they talk? And really digging down into that with people to say, this is how you're going to reach them if you really know who they are and how they talk. Don't just tell me it's a 24 to 36-year-old female who drives an electric car and goes to the farmer's market. Why did she buy the electric car?
Right.
What did she buy at the farmer's market? How does she feel about farmers markets? These things are really important to know. And I've had some incredibly eye-opening sessions just doing the strategy with people where they'll say something to me like, well, but I don't know if that's relevant. And it winds up being one of the most important things they've said the entire session.
I love that. So how do you onboard your client? Because I'm actually looking at, I'm not going to show the front end, but this is a 14-page document that's my onboarding assessment for a client that you pay me first and then you get the assessment. It's like, I don't need to go that deep before you're going to write that check quite seriously, because that's all part of the process where when my client saw this and I told her it's going to be in depth. And when she saw it, she goes, oh my gosh, this is incredible, because what it does, it helps my client to realize their big why. So with you, what's your onboarding process with a client so that you can really dial in and help them with their content?
Before we work together, I do a introductory call. It's about 15 to 20 minutes just to see if it's the right fit for them. Because sometimes I'll get on a call with somebody and it's like, oh, you either are not at this stage or you need something completely different, like PR, which I don't do. So that's the first thing. Then we always start with strategy. Even if they have buyer personas, even if they have buyer's journeys, we start with strategy. And it's just like you and I are talking right now, Kathleen. I have a Notion. Notion is a collaborative note-taking and database SaaS tool. If people aren't familiar with it, it's really great. If you haven't tried it, highly recommend it. I have a Notion dashboard where I keep all the information for one client. It's collaborative. I invite them to be in it and to add and edit as they like. And we get on calls like this and we work through that why. We set the goals first, both for business and for marketing. And I do some work in the background. I do some like keyword research. I'll do audience research once we've done the buyer personas to see where their audience is hanging out on social media, maybe what questions they're asking on Quora and Reddit, places like that. But we get on these calls and we talk about the customer psychographics. We dig into their heads. We look at the analytics and the data that the brand already has, dig into feedback that they've had. We look at their Amazon reviews and really dig down into everything that is important for them to know about their customers. And that gives us a much broader customer profile than just demographics. And if things are needed, like a customer interview, I've started doing customer interview templates for people to take and get on calls with their customers or email them. And to really help to learn more about how their customers are using their products, how their customers view their own lifestyle. Are they exclusively plant-based? Are they flexitarian? Those sorts of things. So it's really an interactive process, and we go through several of these meetings to do the buyer personas, the buyer's journey, and we also start to build out the topics that we're going to write about and talk about for their brand.
You know, I really like the whole idea of actually getting on the phone they get on the phone with their clients, because it's amazing how many people are phone phobic. It's like they avoid the phone, you know, they'll text and everything, but to actually have a person-to-person conversation, and that can make all the difference in the world for the client feeling appreciated. Now, when you are looking at possibly working with a client, do you ever have times where it's just like everything indicates they could be a good fit, but something inside is just saying, nope, they're not a fit? And what do you do in that case?
I have had that, and I have actually even had that with previous clients who want to do other projects and it's just not a right fit. And this is where I have to unleash the not so secret of my business. I don't make much of a secret of it that I am a practicing and committed Christian. I talk about this in Clubhouse. I talk about this. I talk about this with clients sometimes. And a while back, maybe about a year ago, I heard a podcast they talked about having business meetings with God. And I thought, I need to do that. And I've literally been doing it every single week since I listened to that podcast. And so what I do when I have a situation like that, and I'm not really sure, because you always think in your head, but I could make X money. And then you have to think, is it worth it? And so I do. I take it to my business meeting with God. I pray about it and I say, God, what do you want me to do? And where God leads me, I go. And I've said no to some pretty lucrative stuff because of that. And it's made me, a little more discerning about what I do and what I don't do. And I have never regretted it.
Well, the one door closed opens another one. And I just recently interviewed two ladies they're faith-based Christian, and they do the Daniel fast. So we had them on the Plant-Based Eating show, Gigi and Cersei, and they're very God-driven and they're very open about it. And that's what they do with their clients. They pray with their clients because that's their whole business model. Now, when you have your meeting with God, because that really does intrigue me. I go on my gratitude runs and I feel like my life is a living prayer. And it's like everything is about, thank you, God, for the abundance that I enjoy. Thank you for the mind that I have, the legs I have, the wisdom to have found plant-based vegan eating. I mean, these are truly conversations that I have. So what are your meetings with God like?
Well, I actually have a notebook where I will write down, what do I want to pray about now? I do it on Sunday because it makes sense. I mean, I go to church and it's that sort of, you're already in that sort of mindset. So I write down everything that I want to pray about. And, I start out with, like you said, gratitude, thanking God. Is there anything in my life I need to bring before God that maybe I'm not right with him about? And so I go through those things. And then it's kind of half formal prayer and half conversation. I will pray specifically about the things on my list. And if I have specific concerns, I'll just kind of talk those out. And I also ask for, wisdom, guidance. Is there anything I need to learn? Are there courses I need to take? Are there people I need to meet up with or talk to? And I have seen those doors open in ways that I could not have opened them myself.
I love that.
I say my business runs on prayer, and I got to credit the Lord for it, because I have never had a business that worked out like this in this way before. And I credit taking that step to say, this business doesn't belong to me. It belongs to God, and I need to do it his way.
I love that. I love that because it's like left to our own devices, we're going to totally mess it up. And, you know, like this whole thing with the pandemic, going through it, it was like, it literally brought people to their knees. And it's like, well, that's probably where we need to be, is, you know, really like stepping back and not trying to take charge so much. So if somebody were thinking of contacting you and hiring you, what would be the next step for them to reach out to you?
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I am always open to direct messages on LinkedIn. I check it a couple times a day, sometimes more than I should. You know, when you're procrastinating, you're like, oh, I wonder what's going on LinkedIn. Or you can email me directly, which is Sam, S-A-M, @modernhealthnerd.com. And I'm open to hopping on calls and just kind of getting to know people and seeing if there's synergy.
Excellent. Excellent. And when they go to your website, is there a way for them to get on your subscriber list? How does that work?
I don't actually have an email newsletter right now, but I do have a sign-up box for when that returns. I was doing it for a while, and then, you know, things shifted a little bit and I didn't have the time to keep it up. But the best way to really keep up with me is to connect on LinkedIn or follow on LinkedIn. And also on my website, there is a calendar that you can book a 15-minute intro call.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Sam, in closing, what are your final thoughts for people? If you could have me ask you any question at all, what would that question be? And what's your advice to people?
Ooh, any question at all. Well, since we're in the context of business and vegan visibility and things, I think probably a question would be, you know, what would be good advice for a kind of an up and coming plant-based brand, especially in the CPG DTC space? And
explain that.
Yeah. Well, up and coming brands are they're called emerging brands. They're the ones that they're not the Beyond Meats and the Impossible Burgers of the world. They're the people who are like, you know, where Miyoko was when she started, or maybe that small brand that you see at your local farmer's market that is in a few stores in your area, but they're trying to go national. Things like that. Those are great. Those are great little brands. I love them. And my biggest advice for them would be, you know, just don't jump the gun. Get to know your customers first. And honestly, I sell content marketing services, but I'm saying this is like, don't come to somebody like me until you have that solid base of knowledge about who you're selling to and what your brand is all about and what you want to accomplish. Then you can start doing the other marketing initiatives, because you'll have something where you can look back and say, you know, we were talking about discernment before, and be discerning about what I'm going to do, what I'm going to talk about, and what I'm not going to talk about. Because when you know who your customers are, you know what you're all about, then you have that foundation to go forward with whatever content you want to bring to your audience and however you want to educate them.
Wonderful. And I think for me, I always advise people to know who you're listening to. And if somebody is giving you advice that doesn't know what they're talking about, like it would be like a non-vegan advising a vegan on what's healthy to eat as a vegan, and they really know nothing about it. And it's the same in business. It's like, go to people that they have a track record, you can trust them, and they will be willing to walk away from the business because it's in your best interest. So with that, final thoughts, what would you like to share with people?
Well, first of all, we did not coordinate our glasses. Just anybody who's that we did not do this. So, you know, we didn't conspire to wear similar glasses today. I'm looking at you and I'm like, it's very similar. And my final thoughts for people. Well, going back to the very beginning, plant-based is definitely a journey. And that includes whether you are running a brand or whether you are just doing it for your own health or well-being of the planet, or because you love animals or whatever. It's a journey. Don't worry about doing it perfect the very first time. And I would actually apply the same advice to running a business. Don't worry about doing it perfect. Just keep going, one foot ahead of the other. And I think, since I'm the modern health nerd, I would also add, don't be afraid to be weird. There are a lot of weird brands out there that are doing amazing things. And if that's who you are, then do it. Don't try to be something you're not. go for it. And my background says do something great, so do that.
I love it. I love it. Well, Sam, this has been delightful. And I want to remind people you've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Show. I'm Kathleen Gage, your host, and I've been talking with Sam Houghton, who is the Modern Health Nerd. And you can find her at modernhealthnerd.com. That's modernhealthnerd.com. Definitely on LinkedIn. And we'll put the link below because it's Theresa Sam Houghton. And we'll put the correct spelling and everything, make sure it's a link that works. And Sam, I just so appreciate what you're doing. And it's been delightful getting to know you. And I know that we're going to know each other for a long time because I'm always looking for vegan run businesses that are aligned with the whole mission, the whole movement that I can share referrals with, because there's people that need your services and I don't provide those services. So it's a great fit. Thank you for your time, Sam. And to everybody listening and watching, go out, be kind, live compassionately, and do something good for the animals and the planet and your health. This is Kathleen Gage, wishing you a great day.
You've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live. And we always appreciate reviews. Join us next time for more inspiration, education, and motivation to build your business one cruelty-free and healthy person at a time.